Welcome back to episode 156 of the RUDIS Wrestling Podcast. Today, I'm joined by national championship winning coach Tom Ryan from The Ohio State University. Tom, thanks for jumping on the show.
Good to be with you, Matt.
Yeah. So we were just talking off the air before we jumped on, like the new realities moving forward. And I know that that's probably in your day, like part of your daily conversations with your staff, with your administration. Like, what are the new realities that you're hearing coming down from Gene Smith, from the administration, from the Big Ten, moving forward about what you think is going to happen, projecting moving forward?
Yeah, it's so challenging, right, Matt? Because it's a moving target, right? We don't know, when things are going to start to open up. We don't know vaccines or when there'll be a vaccine. So it's, you're planning for something that's constantly moving. But, I think, well, first of all, probably the same, like, microscopic germs, I look at them completely different now than I did before, right? It's like, it can take down the most powerful nation in the history of the world, shut it down, right? Something, smaller than the head of a pin, right? It's causing such havoc. So just bacteria and germs are looked at differently now. But I think we're living in an age where I know, at least I would say pretty certain that until the vaccine's found, I think you're going to see an age where everyone's wearing masks. If you go to a sporting event, wearing masks. If a sporting event, if the arena holds 40,000, maybe they only allow 20,000 in, more spacing. I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what life's like here going forward.
And I think being where you're at, the position you are with the institution you're at, you're, like it or not, you guys are driving a lot of the narrative that people are going to follow. I mean, the Big Ten, Ohio State is going to probably chart a path sooner than everybody else, and everybody else is going to take the lead of the Big Ten and the NCAA. So some of those things that you're talking about as an administration and as a department.
Well, I think the biggest thing right now that's probably on the mind of just sports fans in general and administrators is football, right? I mean, football, what happens with football? Do you start this? These are discussions we know that are happening, right? Do you start the season on the regular schedule? Do you push the season back? Do you allow spectators? If you do allow spectators, how many spectators do you allow? So those are real conversations that are happening on campuses. And of course, at a university like Ohio State that puts over 100,000 in, you limit that or cut that completely and only have athletes in arenas. You're talking about a serious financial hit to institutions, and the that's going to hit someplace, right? That's going to hit somewhere. So, I mean, those are things that right now that then we're talking about when do we come back, or when's the right time to open back up. We've been out of the wrestling room since March 11th. Wrestling, March 11th, 3:30. They came in and said, listen, NCAAs are canceled. These guys basically have 36 hours to have their stuff out of their lockers and be out of here, right? That's how this thing just came like a tsunami, right? It stormed across the country. So, coming back, are you going to have your temperature taken? Are you, what are the guidelines going to be? Just reinserting ourselves into what was a normal life. So all these things are being discussed. And we're living through it.
So I know it's interesting. Before I jumped on the podcast here, we're meeting as a company and we're talking about the opportunities that we have in front of us. And I don't think probably most of America or the rest of the world are really thinking like that. But I think us as wrestlers and the unique nature of the sport, that's what separates a lot of wrestlers is like they look at the challenge and get excited, right? So
yeah.
What message are you sending to your guys right now? Like, hey, this is an opportunity to get better. In some way, we have to find a way to get better. Like, even though the world is saying we can't or telling us what we can't
right.
do, how do we find the opportunity amongst the challenge?
Yeah, I mean, when in life, right, is going into a cocoon been something that's, worthwhile. If the brain is not trying to find solutions and answers and understanding and moving forward, you're regressing, right? So you're either moving forward or backward. There's no staying the same. And we know this, at least from we're talking purely wrestling and training standpoint. Last year at this time, these guys were they were really in the midst of a relatively intense training period because you're getting ready for the U23 Worlds, the Junior Worlds, right? And now you're at home. And why is it, right? Why is it that a human being should change who they are based on location? That should have no bearing. Now, it's nice that people around you that are like-minded, that are pulling you through sometimes. But the reality is, whether I'm in isolation or I'm in the midst of a team of motivated people, whether I'm in Columbus, Ohio, or somewhere in Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, wherever I am, my core comes with me. Who I am, what I stand for, the things I believe in. So, that's the expectation I have of our guys. You've got to be putting yourself under duress. Sure, it's harder, but be who you are, right? You're not a chameleon. You don't just blend into, well, now no one's around, so I'll sit on the couch all day. That's craziness. So, we're in a phase right now where, listen, the teams, I believe this, right? The teams that are really doing a job at finding solutions to training, right? Some guys can't get into the gym. Gyms are closed, right? So finding solutions and challenging themselves in this time, they'll have an advantage, no question about it. Come March, like April is going to impact March. Make no doubt about it, right? No mistake about it. That's going to happen. So, we have Zoom calls with our guys, and there's smaller leadership groups that break out, and they challenge each other. Peer pressure is a powerful thing. So better figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things within every team. Yes, they respond to the leadership of the coaches, but your team is strong as your internal leadership on the group. So how are you relying on the leaders within your group, and who's identified themselves, or who's maybe surprised you that has stepped up and taken on a leadership role amongst the team during this time?
Yeah, I think, through the amount of time I've been with these guys, you get a pretty good idea, right, of the ones that in this environment are going to do extremely well, right? They show you day in and day out that they've got the mindset to really lead. So what we've done is we've taken some of those guys and we've broken the team down by class, and each class has a leader. So we have a big group meeting where we talk about things, right? And how you're doing in this quarantine, and what's the biggest struggle, right? We just talk, and people open up more real about things. And then we broke it down to smaller groups by class. And, a guy like Dylan D'Amelio is just a tremendous leader, and, Zach Steiner, sometimes the great leaders, they're not the ones that, just because you can hit high crotches better than somebody else doesn't mean that you can lead anybody, right? So our leaders, not all of our leaders are our best wrestlers. They're really good wrestlers, but they're elite in the way they carry themselves and when they think. And, Zach Steiner is a fantastic example of that for us. Dylan D'Amelio, who hasn't won a Division I varsity match yet, is a great example for us. Echemendia, who's coming in, has done a really good job at his cultural difference is interesting. When coach says something in Cuba, you do it. So, you do it. So he brings an interesting component to it. But, Caleb Romero has been really good. Rocky Jordan, Rocky's a really good leader. So, it's been interesting. And, they're expected to run a 2-miler once a month. They're expected to run 15 miles a week, just some basic things, right? I mean, just some really fundamentally basic things to maintain a level of fitness. And overall, it's been good.
Yeah. So have there been any ways that the team is challenging itself to do things on their own, or what are some of those things that are elevating and driving each guy?
Yeah, well, I think for one, it's a competitive place, right? It's a competitive place. So, you can set on the depth chart, and there are some weight classes that almost every weight class that latency is going to cause you a problem, right? So you have just that intrinsic thing of, look, the team's really good. And despite the fact that I may be a point or two ahead of this guy, he can catch me, right? So just have that natural competitive thing with with a team that presents some depth in some weight classes. I think some of the groups, they did a 10-mile challenge. Some of them are challenging each other within the group, the 10-mile run challenge. And so there's some things that they're doing to push each other. But ultimately, there's also a standard that, we've been second 5 times, right? You've been second 5 times. You win 1 in 15. You've been third in the last 5 or 6 years. That's not what. Listen, that's not what we want, right? We're proud of it, but we've been so close sometimes, and then right the underlying goal is right 10 guys winning it. Every weight class, you put someone on the mat that legitimately can win. So, the standard's really high in general, and I think the depth, causes a good situation.
So jump in. You brought up Echemendia a couple minutes ago, and he's a guy. His story, where he's coming from, his narratives is just fascinating. Bring me up to speed about where he's at and where you see him moving ahead, because there's been so many question marks around the case. I think we're familiar about the talent of the kid, but bring us up to speed about him a little bit.
Yeah. So, we thought we would have him in December, right? The plan was he would be inserted into our lineup somewhere in December, and he would help us, this past season. So you look at what initially was felt like a curse. How did so we couldn't get it done quick enough. We couldn't get him into school, registered quick enough to have him in our lineup. So we're thinking, for a moment, you're bummed. Well, then, who would have thought that had he wrestled this season, he would have lost a year, right? You feel for guys like Kolodzic, kids that, student athletes that came out of redshirt to help their team, and they just lost a year. So it ended up being something initially that was disappointing, became a blessing for us. But he was, he defected from Cuba. He was a 6-time national champion. Obviously, they have a strong wrestling influence there. And he was initially going to go to Iowa State. He flipped to Ohio State. So he saw the light and came to Ohio State. Loved it when he came. So we got him to Ohio State. He was going to enroll in December. Didn't enroll in December. He's now enrolled. So he's enrolled in the summer session. He's taking summer classes. Got through the clearinghouse, and he has a redshirt year and 4 years of eligibility. And he's doing really well.
So off the top of my head, I can't recall you ever having another international guy on your team. I could be wrong. But as you're exposed to those new situations with Echemendia, like, how are you navigating? Because there's barriers there and challenges, and obviously there's support systems surrounding the program, that he's going to have access to. But how are you approaching him differently, given his literally? There's language barriers. There's wrestling barriers as far as getting up to speed from a folk style standpoint. So what's the game plan been with that? Not only with the staff, but how are you, bringing in your support staff to make sure that he's off on the right path? Because wrestling's one thing. You got to make sure he's passing his classes and doing really well there, so he can actually be on the mat, right?
Yeah, no question. So, you look at all the things that can go wrong, right? For me personally, I've never had an international student. 20 years of coaching, I've never recruited one until Anthony. So you start with, what are the things, where are the areas of concern? So his English, he speaks really well, but he didn't grow up speaking English, right? So he's had tutors. He still has tutors, work hard on his English. He's enrolled in classes. We have 2 coaches on campus that are Cuban. Both were Olympic stars. Our men's gymnastics coach and our men's fencing coach, assistant coach. So that really helped me with him, because building trust with him was so important, right? Just in getting him, building trust with anybody, building trust with an American recruit is important, but building trust with a Cuban who has no family here. He has nobody, right? An American, for the most part, they can always turn to somebody in the area to help them. He didn't have that. So building an intense trust with him was really big. And some of these Cuban coaches who had nothing to gain by sharing information with him really helped who we are at Ohio State Wrestling and about the university, right? There was no angle for them. He wasn't going to help their team. He's a fellow Cuban citizen that they want to take care of. So from a wrestling standpoint with Anthony, getting him to understand 1 hour weigh-in is an issue, right? Because he wants to go 41. Now, when he sends me photos, right? I see him on Instagram. He looks like 241.
He looks like gigantic.
He's enormous.
I was like, this guy's going 65, and you're saying he's going 41?
I know. It's mind-blowing. So the whole staff, I keep telling the staff, I communicate with him more than the other coaches. They communicate with a lot of other guys more than me. But he's like, Coach, I weigh 152. I'm like, you can't wait. What are you holding on to, a giant helium balloon, like on the scale? Like, how is it possible? He goes, I don't know, Coach. I just look really big in pictures. So I said, send me a video on his scale. Show me. He weighs 150. The guy weighs 150. It doesn't make sense. And then we were laughing about it. He's telling me, he's like, my whole life, people thought I just look bigger than I am. I'm like, you must have no organs. You got a big heart, clearly, but you must be organless, right? He's a droid or something. So anyway, that's what he weighs. He weighs 150. The other day he took a picture after he ran like 10 miles and he's trying to he's lifting logs and, getting his workouts in, and 150. So anyway, so that's an issue though, right? The 1 hour weigh-in and feeling good after weigh-in. It's not a day before, international wrestling and then bottom, of course, just a whole math thing. So we send him videos of technique, the best techniques on top and bottom. And he did have a high school season. So he has some awareness of it. And the thing about him is, as you know, right, through so many years of coaching and wrestling at a high level, his power is unbelievable. And it's very rare that someone with great power is held down. Now, you might have a handful of freaks, right, across the country, maybe a guy at each weight, maybe that's that good on top, but you're going to have to be really good on top to manage the amount of power that he can generate in positions. But he's also, his proprioception is incredible. His body awareness in space, right, is incredible. So I don't think it'll take too long, but it's certainly an area that we're going to hone in on right away.
So with him, I think there's always the perception, like you were saying, like, oh man, there's this big divide between bridging the gap between freestyle to folk style. But I think high level athletes, in some ways, like, he's never had the luxury of forming bad habits on bottom. Like, I'm just going to hang out here, put my head down. Like, when you teach him this, that's the only way he knows how to do it. And so therefore, being a highly skilled athlete that he already is, he's like, okay, this is what I do. And then he goes out and do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, absolutely. Yeah, there's no bad habits there. And he's an elite athlete. So, the other thing is, he's been off for a while, right? I mean, this is a guy that was training at a really high level in Cuba, defected, his story is going to come out on Flows soon. I mean, this guy was in prison, right? He defected. You come across the border. It's a Cuban act of 1972 or something. I've learned about some of this stuff. And you get to the United States and you say, look, basically I was not being treated fairly. I'm an innocent person and I'm leaving the country. And then they got to do research on you. So they put you in a holding tank, right? He was in a holding tank for a few months in a jail cell that is, smaller than half the size of a dorm room, right? And they let you out 1 hour a day, right? This guy went through some really challenging things to be here and get here. And then he gets here and he goes to Arizona and wrestles in high school, wins the states, wins the junior nationals in both styles. He opens our eyes like, who is this guy? Where's this guy from? Right. So, and then he's training at at different places, starting to get his fitness level up. And he doesn't get into school at Ohio State. Now he's living in Ann Arbor, in a scenario where there's not great opportunities for him. And then there's a shutdown, March 11th is a shutdown. So he just needs to get himself, back to a level that he was at when he was, beating Gilman as a high school wrestler, as a 15-year-old, So, but we're very careful to not look. He's never wrestled a college match, right? Build up these hopes. The bottom line is let's stick to the principles of success, right? And the rest should take care of itself.
So what's your plan there as far as when he's ready to go? Are there going to be zero restrictions? He's just like, he's ready, just let him run. Or do you want to ease him in? Do you have a plan? I'm sure you guys have talked a little bit, like, how do we introduce this college thing? It's going to be a little bit different, but it's still wrestling fundamentally. Have you thought about how you're going to introduce him into competition?
Yeah. We'll assess him. It's kind of like the situation we're in now. We just don't, we don't know enough. We haven't seen him enough. We haven't seen his habits enough. Or my assumption is that he's got great habits, right? All the principles of success that need to be applied. He understands all these things. Getting up early, getting in and work out in the morning, getting to class, doing your homework, coming back in the afternoon, being in bed at a reasonable time, right? These are all the things that the elite do. A high level of emotional intelligence. I think he's incredible emotional intelligence. We'll see, though. He's going to be challenged, too, right? D'Amelio was going 41. Four-time Ohio high school state champion, who's incredibly disciplined. So there's some people around the weight, but we'll take it day by day. The plan is to have him compete for the first college match. Will be, if the season takes off as planned. Usually we go to the Michigan State Open, or go to an open tournament and get some matches in and assess him. But there's a lot of unknowns, but he's a talent that I'll take every time with the unknowns, right?
Yeah.
Give me this dude with some unknowns. We'll figure it out. But we're looking forward to, I think he's going to be a lot of fun, if he can remain disciplined for fans, for just people to follow. He's the first Cuban athlete on campus, I believe.
Really?
Right. So yeah, we just don't have that many. I know the only one right now. It's just not that, right? You just can't leave. You can't just leave, and he defected, right? So he's a political asylee is what he is. He's a political asylee. So, yeah, we're glad we got him, and I got to know him really well. He's a wonderful person, through the recruiting process, and we're glad he chose Ohio State.
Yeah. So let's go back.
Yeah.
You were talking about the standard, and reconnected with, obviously, winning in 2015, set the precedent, set so many new standards. You were talking about the standard, but replicating that, what are the things that you learned actually going through the process and actually winning? Because I think you hear a lot of coaches all the time, like, oh, we're going to be national champs. We got a national champ winning team, and this guy's going to win an individual title. But until you actually do it, I mean, what knowledge did you gain from that experience that you're continuing to refine and apply today?
Yeah, and I think that I was fortunate, right, as a college wrestler to be on a team that won 2 titles, right, when I transferred to Iowa. So I had a unique experience under Coach Gable in how he handled a team that, look, the reality was that team should have won the Nationals, right? When you look at, right, who we had, right, the amount of talent and the level of workload that the team was undergoing, but it was never talked about, right? So I learned that, right? I learned that, talking about it, look, if the standard is to be your very best, then let's just make that be the standard, to be your very best. The underlying theme always is if everyone's their very best, well, the team will do the very best that they can. So you want to be part of a better team, be a better you, right? So it's really individually focused. How can we make each guy reach their full potential? I learned this too. I like first a lot more fun than second, right? So I know that. And keeping, the responsibility, and something that some of these coaches, just do a really good job at is, one of the responsibilities when you have the best guys is to keep them healthy, keep stress low, right? Not a lot of stress. Talking about successes is they're stress inducers, not reducers, right? So just really keeping it about the process. And a lot of people say that, but the process, high character people, high emotional intelligence people, incredible workload, people that are disciplined, get up in the morning and do what they're supposed to do. So learning a wide array of skills, but some things that you're a master at. but having a big bucket of knowledge from a wrestling standpoint. So, you know, I thought we were the best team in 2009. We hadn't won. We didn't win in 2009. You know, Iowa got like 3 or 4 forfeits in the All-American round. And every coach that was second could look back and say, right, this, and this. And I don't want to be that whiner doing that. But the reality is that in 2009, I'm under the bleachers. It's pretty much, I mean, it's almost over. John Smith came up to me and goes, "Congrats, man, on your first title." And I'm like, "Oh." And he's like, "No, it's almost going to be impossible to catch you," right? That night, 3 forfeits happened. Look at the brackets. In the All-American round, that's 6 points on forfeits. We lost by like 4 points, right? So in 9, I'm like, we had it. And then we go this period of time where we're not really in the hunt. And then in 15, I said, we got the guys to do it. Now we just got to do it, right? So it's you know, the blessing of staying healthy, smart training, not overtraining. You know, I always err on the side of under than overtraining, and keeping it fun, keeping it fun, and you know, really about the process. So
yeah, you said something in that explanation that I always find fascinating. You talked about when you get the high level athlete that you have access to now, you know, there's an aspect of understanding how to manage the elite mentality and managing the elite level body. And I what I'm drawn to is like, that's a stark departure from what you had at Hofstra. Like that was very much a developmental program at the time. And you had to get not necessarily the blue chip guys, but you identified something within them that you knew that you could develop, whatever it is, probably a mentality, an attribute, or a certain skill. But now and I know there's developmental challenges at Ohio State as well, but now getting the elite guy, how is that different between developing, you know, a good high school wrestler as opposed to getting the elite of the elite?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest piece for both, right? For both is just mindset and the belief, right? There's nothing more powerful than belief. And when you're in a place, you know, like Ohio State, where you've got Olympians in the room, Olympic hopefuls in the room. You know, I remember as an athlete when I was at Syracuse, right? I was initially at Syracuse. And even though I might have been the best guy in the room and doing really well in the room and maybe won all the runs, I remember having this doubt, is that good enough? Right? Because there was nobody in the room. There were a lot of great guys in the room, but there was nobody elite. So, okay, so I'm scoring on a really good guy, but how would he fare against the best of the best? Right? So you have this, I had this shadow of doubt where I put something on a pedestal. I just couldn't quite reach there. When I went to Iowa at the time, which is Ohio State now, it's a handful of schools where to have these super high level athletes, super high level successful people. And now it's like, well, I remember at Iowa, like, I got a takedown on this guy. This guy was the reigning national champion. Oh, you know, that's maybe I'm at that, right? Maybe I'm at that standard. And I think the biggest thing at any level, is the mind and just believing, the power of just believing. And at Ohio State, we by truth, by facts, you start to believe. Well, yeah, why would I not think I'm really good? Every day in the room, I take down, for example, Tomasello. He won 4 Big Ten titles. He's a national champion. I must be really good. And I think that the ability to get people to believe earlier, I had a couple of really strong believers at Hofstra early on. Roman Flazar, Eric Schmiesing, you know, guys that they just had a belief in themselves. And they were multiple-time All-Americans because of it. Not everybody has that, you know, that mindset. And the more that do it in an organization, the next guy comes in and says, well, Schmiesing did it, I'm going to do it. Right? You had it, right? You had it going there at Binghamton, right? So someone comes in and does it, they believe it, it's a lot easier for the next guy. So, you know, at Ohio State, that's I would say is probably the biggest thing. The other thing is to be very careful with the elite athlete and pampering them, right? So it's a fine line, right, between this sense of the better I get, the less I have to do, right? That is the opposite of how I think. But you have to, I think the big piece, right, is just communicating with them extremely well, right? Communicating with them really well. And one of the best in the business at that, you know, is Travell. You know, we just have a great, you know, he does a really good job at laying things out and asking the right questions of the elite athletes.
And most of the elite of the elites, they tend to obsess, and there's a very fine line between being obsessed about the sport and overthinking the sport. And, you know, when I see things from Travell, he's very analytical with his approach. How does he balance that analytical mentality without crossing the line of getting the guys to actually overthink too much?
Yeah, right. I think he gets them talking. You know, we find such value in talking and writing. There's such a great value in writing down what you're thinking, right? Writing what you learned. And I think he's just a really good question asker. You know, he's just really good at asking questions that ultimately cause an inspiration in them, and to see things in a way that's really productive for them. I mean, you know, the other thing is that these ones we're talking about, right? There's no you and I know this, right? There's no magic dust. God doesn't say, let me think. This guy over here in the middle of nowhere in Florida, I'm going to throw a little something special on this dude over here so that he can go on and be this fantastic wrestler, right? Every single person I've coached that has been at a really high level, they are incredible CEOs of their life. They're curious, they're thinkers, they're problem solvers, right? It's why your company, right, is where it's gone, because you're always innovative. They don't need to be told this stuff. There's something about them that demands improvement. They're organized. I remember when Kyle Snyder came in, he was journaling as a high school kid. I mean, he was writing down everything. He was so detailed, not to the point of it stifling him. Well, if everything doesn't go as planned, I can't accommodate change. But there's not one guy that I've coached that's been really, really, really high level. It's won a national championship that I've had to have in my office to discuss an issue with. Right? I mean, it just doesn't, right? Like, problems over here result in problems over here. There's a correlation. And these guys that do really well, to me, the ones I've seen are the ones that really understand this, you know.
And I think there's something different when you commit it to paper, right? Because everybody has thoughts in their mind. You know, I used to, you know, we were talking this morning, I used to talk to my teams, like, everybody goes to bed at night dreaming about the man they want to wake up to be, but very few people wake up and live to be that man. And right. I think when you go a step beyond that and commit it to paper, it's almost like a contract with yourself, right? And I think that's what the greats do. They find a way to make a bigger commitment to themselves than just what is being driven inside their heart and their mind. They want to bring that out and write a contract to themselves. And I think it's actually funny. Kyle was writing some blogs for us, and that's one of the things that he sent to us yesterday. Is like, I commit everything to paper every single day, even to this day, which I think is fascinating.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's so true, and it's powerful. And I know there's a physiological happening when you do that. As a team, we have built to lead meetings. And the meetings, we teach these guys, like if someone said, what's the first thing, right, Coach, what's the first thing you teach your team? How to listen, right? They're grown men. They're coming in, they're 18. They have 2 ears. They've been listening. No, they have been listening doesn't mean just because they have 2 ears, they're listening. We teach them how to listen. We teach them how to speak. We teach them how to write, right? Just some fundamental things. It's like stance and motion, how critical stance is, right? If you're struggling, if your wrestling is struggling, go back to the minutia. Is your stance too high? You know, is your shoulder past your knee? Is your knee behind your shoulder? Like, assess some things. Which direction are you moving? Like, we don't need to get into some really fancy technique. Is your head turning when you make contact? Just the most fundamental things. And it's the same thing with our team coming in. Bill to lead. Kyle was riding as a kid. He's been riding and the power in it. And these are just some of the things we talk to our team about their opus, right? What's your purpose? What's the overarching vision of your life, right? What are unifying strategies, and then your scorecard. At the end of the day, when you're going to die, God willing, it's not for a long time, but we know you're going to die, right? When you're on your deathbed, what's your scorecard going to be, right? How many beers I drank, how many parties I crashed, we're not going to remember any of that, right? It's going to be whose life did I impact, right? What difference did I make? Is the world a better place? And we try to get them. It's hard, right? Because I remember when I was 18, I was the king. I was the king, right? It's my universe, right? I'm invincible. Look at my muscles. I'm so fit, right? But as you get older, like you get out, you start to think, and if we can get somebody to think that way earlier, I mean, they are so far ahead of everybody around them, and reaching their full potential. So those are the things that we talk about as a staff, as a team, to get them to think about. And it's a lot of fun.
And what you're saying is you're trying to teach kids how to take ownership of their life. It sounds like a simple thing, stance in motion, but or learning how to write, learning how to speak, learning how to talk, all these things are, other things that I used to say, like, don't just do what I say, own what you do. Like you have to, guys, like when you're the coach, and I would explain this all the time, like you have to do what I say. You have to. I'm the coach, you're the athlete, like it or not. But if you just apply that mentality at face value, you're never going to get where you want to be. You've got to own what we say. And hopefully that starts in the recruiting process, right? It's like, this is what Ohio State's about. And they're buying into that ownership right at the front end, right?
Yeah, and I think absolutely, and I think that the challenge, right? It's just a real challenge where we didn't have, right? How old are you now?
47.
47. So I'm a couple years older than you. When we were growing up, the world wasn't as noisy.
No.
Listen, I didn't have a cell phone until I was 26. My first cell phone, I was at Hofstra. I got a cell phone. I got a Nextel. I got a flip phone. You couldn't do anything on it but call. I wasn't even texting, right? And so up until 26, and it was still challenging the world, how noisy it is, right? And the world is so dang noisy. Now you have Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and and all these things coming at these kids. And the problem is that they have no time to think, right? And if you can't think, your speaking is going to reflect what's coming in your brain. And if the only thing coming in your brain is noise, the only thing you're going to speak is jumble, right? And the ability to just quiet, which is why this quarantine, even though we still have all these, technological resources coming at us, it's time just to take a step back, right? And just assess, who am I? Why am I here? What matters to me? And why am I speaking the things I'm speaking? And why am I trusting the things I trust? Like, why do I trust something? And, it's just something that the millennial athlete, student, human being has to deal with. And if you're not listening to the right things, or even assessing, why would I even listen to this? Your chance of progressing diminishes.
And I think, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I actually think that's probably the biggest challenge of a coach today is the noise. There's always been distractions. There's always been whatever in the past, but in today's day and age, and I was actually, I was talking to Colette about this last week, and he's like, he was talking to one of his old coaches, and he's like, I wasn't trying to minimize what he was trying to tell me, but I was trying to tell him, Coach, you never had to live in this information age. Like it's insane the level of distractions. I'm surprised kids can stay focused. Because there's so much noise out there. There's so many things to distract them. And there's so many lies being told them. We used to just, I wouldn't call them lies, but stories being written about your athletes in the past. Like when you were at Iowa, you could buy into that lie because it's a story probably promoting how great Iowa was, how great you were, but it's your choice. Do I believe in this now? Now you have 100,000 followers on Instagram telling you lies all the time, telling you certain things that you should believe and buy into, that you're preaching a different message, right?
Yeah. No question about it, man. It's you know, it goes back to what we, you know, maybe a little bit earlier about just your core, right? You got your physical core and your literal core, right? Every day, look, if we don't do some stomach work every day, there's a good chance, a little bit every day, there's a good chance that you'll have the chance of having back problems as an older man will be better if you don't do that. So it's a little bit every day, right? You work on your physical core. Then there's your literal core of who am I? What do I stand for? You know, when no one's around, how would I handle something? And the reality is that temptation is so intense. I mean, temptation. I mean, when we were growing up, the only girls that I knew, right, were people that were in my school. I saw them in the hallway. That was it. Now you have access to from the internet, just bombarding and being in a relationship with somebody, and the challenges of it, right? And the choices. The internet's a beautiful thing. You can learn so much on it. It's also so challenging. And to get people to just let's know who they are, no matter what comes their way, no matter what you're hit with, that you are rooted in something that is absolutely truthful. You're rooted in it, and nothing can uproot you, no matter what comes your way. And that is just really, that is the challenge. You know, that is the challenge for this generation. So it's been a challenge for every generation. It's a challenge of mankind, right? Not to get too deep, but that's just the reality of it. And it's only tougher, I think, in these times.
But there's freedom there if you can find a way that, like you said, all these new pieces of information are beautiful things if we channel them the right way. It's kind of like talking about guys in relationships with girls. You know, I would always tell guys, people tell you don't find a girlfriend. I'm telling you, if you find the right one, it's going to be the best thing for your career.
Agreed.
But the tough thing is finding the right one. And I think just like the internet and all this access we have to information, there is beautiful things and beautiful opportunities there, but you have to dig to find them. And you can't just say, this one makes me feel good, right? This one makes me feel good, but it doesn't really add substance to what I do, right?
Right. And that goes back to, the thinking, like, listen, writing, what am I looking for? I mean, when do we ever find something? Very rarely that we're just not looking for. These are the qualities I want, right? This is even, you're choosing a university. These are we have an in-depth spreadsheet on evaluating talent and who we're bringing in and why we're bringing them in. And every single time it's like, well, I know that's a little bit of an issue, but we're going to go with it anyway. It burns us, and we're human. And it's like, no, there's a red flag there. Yeah, but you know what? We can, and it's just a natural, well, we can overcome that. But the reality is just for people, for all of us, to think through, here's what I value. Here's who I am. Here's what I value. Here's what I'm looking for. And one of the things I've seen with really high level people is not the moment they recognize it, but shortly after the moment they recognize it, they'll stop. Like if they notice something in their life that's just not going to be beneficial, they don't keep holding on to it, thinking it's going to be different. They release it. It's like the analogy of the monkey, the way you catch a monkey, right? You put the banana in the jar, banana in the jar, and the monkey puts his hand in and he grabs the banana, and he all he's got to do is let go of the banana, but he won't let it go. His mind's fixated on the banana, and he's caught, and that's how he gets trapped, right? So it's like not only the ability, the knowledge of knowing what's right, but also knowing what's wrong and when to let it go. And that's challenging, right?
So let me ask you this. This is kind of fascinating, because I think we've all learned those hard lessons, believing like I can change this guy.
Yeah.
And it's tough. I tend to think now, like you probably could change that guy, but you got to be selective. Like, I only have 5 years. Like if I had 10 years, 15 years, I could change everybody I recruited. I believe with the mission and everything you're saying, like I could change this person, but your timeline's different. I'm not getting this employee that I hope I retain for the next 30 years. You actually only have 5 years. And it's like, how do you and the staff identify like this guy will let it go and buy in the period of time that we need?
Yeah. So this, just goes back to the, the formula, the things that, we need to have complete trust in them, right? I don't know if I've ever trusted anybody. The first time they told me something, they did it, and now I have full trust in them, right? Trust, the reality is that trust takes time, and even the recruiting process, it's not like you have that much time. Once you get to know them, right? We can't call them until June 15th at the end of their sophomore year, but over time, not only asking him the questions, but trust is built for us. We consult other coaches, teammates, right? Different. Not only their high school coach, but maybe there's your national team coach. So you're trying to build a case for the fact that this guy is authentically him, right? He's authentic in who he is, and it's. There's no direct science to it, right? But the reality is that there are indicators, right, out there that are factual. They're not my feeling. Well, I feel like, well, look how hard. I feel so good about him, right? Trusting our feelings is a scary place to be all the time, right? We're not only trusting our feelings, but we're trusting data. We're looking at data. We track how much the guy wins by. We track his attack rate. Is he aggressive or not? It's very hard to turn somebody from a passive wrestler to an aggressive wrestler. And we know this. Aggression develops. Passivity does not develop as quickly. But an aggressive wrestler will absolutely come into a system and they will learn. They're not afraid to take chances. They're risk takers, educated risk takers. So, building trust is something that requires a lot of digging and a lot of work, and it takes time. And we're looking for people that have shown that they're absolutely trustworthy. And they're looking for the same in a coach, right? I mean, it's challenging for these recruits too, right? A lot of the teams look the same, but how am I going to know they're going to my back through all things?
Yeah.
And we recommend to recruits do the same thing we're doing. Like when I talk to a recruit, what are you evaluating us on? Like, what are you evaluating us on? You got a huge decision. I tell every recruit in the first conversation, tell me the biggest decisions of your life. Whom I'm going to marry. It's a big decision. Yeah. Where am I going to go to college? That's a big decision. What's my profession going to be? How many kids am I going to have? Where am I going to live? Right? These are some big decisions that we make. Who am I going to choose to hang out with? And then you have the biggest decision, which I believe, right, is whether God is real or not. Right? Is he real or not? Like that's the single biggest decision that any human being will ever make. And before we make a decision, what facts are you applying? What facts are you applying toward choosing or not choosing Ohio State and Tom Ryan and Travell and Jaggers and Jordan, like Riley Ross? What facts are you applying? What are you basing your decision on? And to just get people to quiet the noise and think and put data down. We do that with our recruits.
Well, I think this is a perfect way to maybe wrap this up. Like, I didn't know where we were going to get into, and we talked about this yesterday, but this is a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on and share your thoughts. I kind of wanted to talk. I just wanted to talk, and I thought there was going to be some obvious things that we jumped into that we didn't really jump into, which was, so it just sets us up for maybe a future time to jump on.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, really amazed what you guys have done there, and it's been good to follow you a lot for the sport. So tell my boy I say hello too, man, over there, huh?
I will. And
all right.
By the way, keep those dogs clean too.
Yeah, I know. I'm a bad dog watcher. I got in trouble. But they ran. I told you, they ran, man. They made them run. Nice. You want to play in the mud? Play in the mud. We'll play in the mud.
Today's a run. Nice. I love it. Well, hey, thanks, Tom.
Bye, man. See you.